What's something your parents did when you were a kid that you didn't realize was weird until you grew up? Before I was totally competent swimming by myself, my mom would put a life jacket on me, tie a long piece of nylon rope to it, and chuck me in the river. She'd basically swim me on a leash down the river for fun. Mom, you are the classiest redneck. We would write poems for our waiter or waitress whenever we ate at restaurants. My coffee was hot. My water was cold. You brought us our check without being told. Here's $5. Being given things I already owned as presents. SNES and N64 would be pawned, and I'd get them back on Christmas or my birthday. My dad once bought me a SNES and pawned it before giving it to me. He didn't pay off the loan, so he forfeited it. He still told me about it, so I'd know he thought about me. We only use wine glasses to drink stuff. Want some milk? Wine glass. I didn't realize we don't own regular glasses until recently. It's freaking weird. As punishment, my dad used to do a long-term silent treatment type thing. The longest he went without speaking to me was 2 months. I think I had said I hated him when I was in 5th grade. When my brother was in 9th grade, my dad did a silent treatment for 3 months because he cried in front of my dad or something stupid like that. Frick people who play mind games like that. I agree that is disgraceful and childish. My dad did this thing around Christmas time that was called Mr. Tree. Basically, my mom would bring us to the window and he would stand behind the Christmas tree and pretend like the tree was talking to us. After Christmas, they would tell us that Mr. Tree went back to the Christmas tree farm. Imagine my horror when I learned that Mr. Tree was not a thing that other kids had. I pity the fool who don't believe in Mr. Tree. Holy freaking crap, thanks for the awe. Every Sunday my dad would take me to my grandparents' house for lunch with his siblings and their kids. I spent a lot of time around my extended family and never realized any of these occurrences were weird. My granddad raised cattle and would name them after his grandkids. He would then slaughter and feed them to us. He made sure to tell us which of my cousins we were eating that day. My uncle would tie us to trees by the road and steal our shoes. We always thought it was a lot of fun, but looking back it's a little concerning that no one ever stopped and helped us. My mom regularly told me I was the reincarnation of Jesus and would have me lay hands on her legs. She was crippled in a car accident before I was born. Her legs never healed, but I always thought they might. I legit believed I was Jesus till I was like 13. She would tell my little sister I was Jesus too. We have a regular old wood burning fireplace. My siblings and I always wanted to help my dad build fires. My dad eventually made up a ranking system of fire building. The ranks and coordinating responsibilities are as follows. Assistant apprentice can only rip up newspaper and retrieve kindling. Apprentice can assist higher ranks in making fire. Junior fire builder can build fire unsupervised, but higher ranked builder must check work before lighting. Fire builder can build and light fires unsupervised. Master fire builder rank my dad made up so he could still be higher ranked than me when I got older. You had to make 50 fires at each level to move up to a higher rank. We even had a little board with everyone's rank and progress. Gave me shots of vodka before bed to make me go to sleep, I guess. All I can remember is that burning sensation down my throat. Had no idea it was vodka until I started drinking recently. Mom had a mess of undiagnosed mental issues. This was the late 70s and early 80s, when the kids started getting on her nerves. She'd claim she was about to award the Knife of the Week award. This was always in the kitchen before, during, after dinner. She would wave this serrated steak knife around and pretend she was stabbing one of us. I have 2 siblings. Years later, when I told my wife the story, one amongst dozens about my insane mother, this is the one that really made her shake her head. Every Saturday after breakfast they would go to their room to make love, leaving me in the living room to watch cartoons. Our apartment was quite small. I was basically 2 meters away from them and they were loud. Never really thought much of it. Now it makes me cringe a bit. Our favorite part of Christmas was the beaten sticks. We'd take the empty wrapping paper rolls and wrap them top to bottom with duct tape. Then we'd have a family battle royal until all of the beaten sticks had deteriorated and fallen apart. Growing up, I always found it odd that other families threw out their beaten sticks instead of using them for their intended purpose. Thank Christ that went in a happier direction than I feared it would. Not really weird per se, but there is a story that comes to mind that I didn't understand until much later in life. When I was a little kid in the early 80s, 6-7, before my parents divorced, they used to keep an upside down frisbee under the living room couch that I was forbidden to touch. Well, one afternoon while I was at home with the babysitter, my dad comes home from work to find me in the backyard playing with that frisbee, and he freaked out. Turns out they kept their pot in the frisbee, and being a kid I didn't know what all the greenery was, so I just dumped it out in the yard before playing with the frisbee, thinking it was grass clippings or something. Seems like they could have found a better hiding spot. Hiding weed under a toy, then telling your kid not to touch it is just going to make the kid want to play with it more. Moved to a different town almost yearly. My mom, I could understand. She was always just trying to get by. My father and his wife, on the other hand, I think just overstayed their welcome annually. Mine moved all the time too. By the time I got out of high school, I'd attended 22 schools. I bought an acreage 2 years ago. I will leave when I'm carried out in a body bag. When I would get a bee sting on my hand, my mom would pee into a plastic bag and put my hand in it and then tape it closed around my wrist so my hand would rest in the pee. I thought this was completely normal, and one day when a friend asked about the bag around my hand, I explained that it was just my mom's pee to help with the healing of the bee sting. My friend starting singing pee pee hand, it's not your fault in the tune of Smelly Cat, whenever they saw me for years afterwards. My family is just loud. My dad lost some of his hearing working on ocean-going tugboats way before I was born. The man cannot do a single thing quietly. He stomps. He yells through his yawns. He slams cupboard doors. We all talk loudly so he can hear us. All of our family discussions are done at the top of our lungs. My brother-in-law says that living with my parents for a year to save money for a down payment on a house saved their marriage. Before that, he thought he was in trouble when my sister got loud during discussions. I have now spent years trying to give myself volume control. I'm a super happy person, and it's really hard for me to be calm and quiet. I'm working on it. My parents used to make my siblings and I sleep in the same room with them. We had other rooms in the house, but they made us share the bedroom till I was 14. They would even make love at night when they thought we were asleep. Wash and reuse plastic plates, spoons, forks, cups, etc. I feel you. My old man washes paper plates. We have regular dishware. He just thinks slim paper is more effective at holding pasta. Most people in my extended family are some sort of musician. As an experiment, my aunts and uncles all decided to sing happy birthday as off key as humanly possible, not even singing the melody, some in a major key with others in a minor key, and sometimes intentionally a quarter step off from whoever was next to them. Once I was 6 or 7, they asked me if I could sing happy birthday. I could not. We have a family verse to the birthday song. Took me a number of years to realize how odd that is. Whenever I would lose something, I would always ask my mother if she knew where it was. Typically she did, because that's what moms do. But she wouldn't just tell me where the lost item was. She would pause for a moment and close her eyes and say, "Let me use my uterus to find it." It was obviously a joke, but I had no idea what a uterus was as a child. I have no idea how many times I suggested someone else use their uterus to find a lost item, or told people my mother used her uterus to find lost objects. My dad loves to brag about his adult exploits. I always thought it was the coolest thing. Now I think my dad is a pervert. You aren't the only one. Whatever filter dad used to have was killed outright when I turned 21. The laws of birthday cake ownership. The birthday cake is to be shared with all guests and family members at the time that it is unveiled. However, the moment the cake is returned to the refrigerator freezer, it is the sole property of the birthday girl, to be distributed to others at her own discretion. The above notwithstanding, each family member or house guest is entitled to at least one slice of the cake on the day of the party cake unveiling. That's actually a really good rule. Those cigarettes mommy used to make herself turned out to be massive doobies she'd smoke every night. Constant fighting that would sometimes get physical was normal in my household. The first time I went over to a friend's house and the parents touched and said loving things to each other, I was shocked. Then her parents floored me by actually listening to what she was talking about and asked her questions about her day and answered her when she had a question. I had no idea that adults listened to kids, ever. I also had no idea how abusive my family was until then. It was shocking to me. Also, I moved out when I was 16 and I was consistently getting good grades. My grandmother bought me a present for doing well. Positive reinforcement was so strange a concept that I asked what did I have to do to repay her for the gift. As an adult in my 30s, I see the way a person is supposed to behave towards children, and my niece, who lives with me, is being treated like a person, not a burden. When her friends come over, I can see the ones that are being raised like I was and try to be the best role model I can for them. I had a similar experience when I met my husband's family. When his parents came home from work, I tensed up because I expected them to start screaming at each other. Then I heard laughter, and it was bizarre. I started to become aware that some married couples actually like each other. Lol. Nothing. Using the oven to heat the kitchen in the winter. We'd sit in front of the open oven door and play on the kitchen floor. We were pretty poor. In our first home, our parents had a large cuckoo clock in the main bathroom, mounted on the wall opposite the toilet, so you were facing the cuckoo bird as you sat on the toilet. Dad used to tell us to note the time on the cuckoo clock when we sat down, so we didn't tie up the bathroom too long. If the cuckoo sounded while we were in there, he'd knock on the door and say, "Did you fall in? How much longer?" Perhaps this was the downside of having just one bathroom in the house, but looking back, it seems weird. You know how parents tell their kids bedtime stories? Me and my sister badgered my mother to tell us bedtime stories when she didn't want to. So, she told us the classic bedtime stories, but with their own twist. She had this massive book of fairy tales that she'd add special themes into: slavery, genocide, persecution. We were introduced to these difficult adult themes through bedtime stories. There's no real record of her versions because she pretty much just improvised, which is a shame because some of them were really good. Wee Willie Winkie, the boy who personified sleep in the classic Scottish nursery rhyme, was portrayed as a misanthropic demon who would kidnap and enslave kids who went to sleep before 10 p.m. We asked her about it some time back. I had this theory that my mother was subconsciously teaching us about the horrors that she witnessed as a child growing up in a war zone. Like the Wee Willie Winkie story above. Maybe it represented how, when my mother was a child, her uncle was caught by the government forces outside of his home during curfew and was never heard of again. Turns out she just wanted us to stop bugging her for bedtime stories, so she tried to scare us away from asking about them. It was kind of a bummer. For Christmas, my family always puts the Christmas monkey on top of the tree. It's this little, worn out monkey puppet that is 70 plus years old. My great grandmother used to own it. I always thought it was the coolest thing. I didn't understand why people put stars and angels on top of their trees when they could have a bomb-butt Lil Simeon friend impaled on the pines. We would get in our beds for the night and my mom would position herself in the hallway between my brother's room and mine. She would shout, "Are you ready?" We would shout back, "Yeah," and then she would go, "I love you, good night," and we would echo it back. Then the doors were shut and everyone went to sleep, even when friends were over. It was pretty cute. We would have sock wars. It would start by a basket of clean folded socks being left out in the living room. My brother would usually instigate it with my stepdad. Typically it was usually a hour war of hiding around the house and having an artillery of socks hidden and bombing each other with them. It usually ended with my mom coming home and getting peeved that all the clean socks are gone. This actually seems awesome. When my mom would get gas for her car, she would buy the .50 bags of gummy worms. She used to make us tweet like birds and she would feed them to us while she drove. Kept batteries in the fridge. We'd have a whole drawer's worth of new batteries, but they'd keep them in like a side crisper or something on the door. I didn't realize it was weird until I moved in with my so and went to put them in the fridge. She asked me WTF I was doing and I couldn't really answer. It was second nature. We would have a bunch of weird stuff going on. The first thing comes to my mind is the credit system. It simply meant that by doing tasks around the house, keeping my room clean, following our cleaning schedule, It was divided between me and my older brother, and we had a long list of stuff that needed to be done every other week, pulled together by my engineer-minded old man. Taking dogs out, helping with painting the house or chopping wood, etc. We would earn credits worth either €5 or €10. We could also, in case of different, longer term jobs, agree on a fixed price, and we would always do a written agreement. Before taking this approach, Dad got me painting him some wooden planks for several hours to only tell me that he's not paying me anything, because if you don't agree something on paper, the job is worth nothing. The task, short description, and payout would be filled in a personal notebook and used, when needed. We could either withdraw the credits as cash. This was possible only on Sundays, however, so needed to always think forward regards how much will I need, or spend it to some luxuries at home, like being able to use the computer extra 30 minutes or watch TV earlier than 6 p.m. The credit system worked pretty awesomely until I was around 11 or 12 years old, so several years. I think I earned the first credit at 7 Then it kind of started fading as I got my own computer and a bank account, and my parents weren't really able to monitor anymore how many minutes my brother or I were spending with our devices. It wasn't until my late teens that I realized that not every family has systems like this, and most kids would just get a small weekly compensation. That made me feel weird, as I had been used to the thought of having to put into some effort for the cash. A great lesson amongst many I am grateful for. My parents referred to each other as Dickie and P. I didn't ever realize it until my girlfriend junior year in high school pointed that out to me. I am not a smart man. My mom would always mispronounce store names and brands, and I would say it the way she did. When I was 13 or so, my friends made fun of me for saying the names wrong. Now that I'm older, I realize my mom has severe dyslexia and she still can't say the store's name right without it being a jumbled mess. My family, immediate and extended, often bursts into song at random moments, and we harmonize perfectly and do spontaneous solos like we're a freaking boy band or something. They are all really religious, so it's usually Jesus songs, but it happens with Christmas songs a lot too. I honestly had no idea it was weird until my boyfriend came with us on some kind of fairly long drive, and my sisters and I burst into a rendition of Daddy Was a Preacher. The look of confusion and horror on his face was really unexpected and hilarious. He told me later at home that he thought that was a thing that only happens in cheesy movies. It still freaks him out when it happens, even though he's been around it for 3 years. I'm still not convinced it's super weird, but I don't know how. That any money earned by me was to go to helping the family. Anything that I earned from $20 from a job in the cactus farms to some money left over from birthdays went to them. If not, guilt would hit me like a wave. Now I'm 21, moved away and starting a family of my own, and I can't even buy myself a candy bar without being slammed with guilt. My dad used to make me drive the boat so he could go check on the engines. Then it would smell weird for a few seconds. When I turned 15, I noticed the smell elsewhere and connected the dots. I'm guessing pot, but who knows? Your dad could have intestinal problems or something. My grandma still do this. I think it's a normal thing elder Chileans do. I lived with my grandmother till I was 6 years old, and because she did it, I did it too. At night, instead of going to the bathroom, she would just pick up a chamber pot, pelala in Spanish, she had under her bed, and pee in it and tug it under the bed again and go to sleep. I, growing up with it, thought it was perfectly normal, so I would do it too. I wouldn't just pee in it, I would also poop in it. I thought it was completely normal till I reached my teens and thought, hey, that's actually freaking gross. I stopped doing it as a 6-year-old, so I didn't kept doing it. Just for your information. I think that comes from back in the day when you'd have an outhouse instead of a bathroom with water running to it inside the house. Instead of getting up and going outside and across the yard in the dark to the outhouse, you'd do your business in the chamber pot, then empty it in the morning. When my brother or I would say something gross at the dinner table, my mother, instead of chastising us, would use her silverware as a microphone and pretend to be the host of a talk show she called Poopy Chat. You have been visited by the party pug. He just wants you to celebrate with him. Comment woohoo to celebrate with the party pug. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way. Have a great day, you magnificent people.